Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Saturday morning Science of Mind conversations. I'm Reverend Mark Gilbert. It's great to be back with you. This is the first Saturday morning that I am leading in my second year as part of the cadre of speakers who are leading this particular series, and it's great to be back with you. You know, this is the third year that New Thought Media Network has done the Saturday morning Science of Mind series. I was very excited to be invited to participate last year, and I love when my rotation comes up and I can come on and talk with you about the science of mind. And so today we are looking at what it does, which is part of the intro to, the introduction of the science of mind. You know, the very nature of the book itself, which we use as a hook for the conversations in this particular series, is to go back to basics in January and use the first four sections of the introduction of the book. And this is something that is done in many of our Science of Mind centers for spiritual living, and other independent Science of Mind centers around the world. They frequently in January, in the beginning of the year, is to go back to the beginning and study the basics of the philosophy. And that's what we're doing today, as we're going through that and what it does. The first four sections of the introduction, of course, are the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. And what I want to do in a moment is just summarize those, because it's hard to talk about one without talking about how all four of the areas, and also how that relates to the introduction of the book, Science of Mind, and and what and why. I want you to maybe look at the Science of Mind textbook as a hologram. That may be my one of my desires this morning, is to maybe shift your perspective on that. That came up during my meditation, and let me just sort of delve into that. But the very first thing I want to do is to encourage you to, if you're watching, is to drop a comment in the comment field. Let us know where you are and in the world. I'd love to hear not only your name, but your location. So that's what I'm going to leave that banner up for a few minutes. And welcome Wayne, and also welcome Fiona. It's glad to have you with us. I see we got a few more live viewers, and I'm also walking and chewing gum this morning, doing both the production and bringing the stuff up while I'm talking, so you can see if I know how to ride a bike and chew gum at the same time. In any case, for those of you who are on, and Wayne is telling us he is from Calgary, thank you. Good to have you with us, Wayne and Fiona. And to others watching, use your comment field down below to leave a comment. Let us know where you're from. And we see we've got Starla from Chicago. Thank you, Starla, for letting us know where you are. And anyone else. And I will also, if I don't pop your name up on the screen right away, I will come back to it in just a minute. Again, encourage you to do that. Let me talk about the sense of a hologram. This came up in my meditation this morning when I was getting ready for this morning's presentation and discussion. And I really want to encourage you to ask me questions, because these calls are like a hologram too, in a certain way. But what is a hologram? And if you think about a hologram, it's something that, we can all see them on our bank cards. They have a little hologram on the back of them generally, but it's something where you can look at it, and as you shift your perspective, you can see a little object in it or something. And a hologram, and a concept, is that it contains within the aspect of every part of the hologram, all of it is contained. So that if you're looking at a hologram, a flat hologram, and you look into it, it has a 3D effect. But within, no matter where you're looking at it, you can see it from a different perspective. And so we're used to these little two-dimensional holograms that we look into in a 3D. But what I want you to imagine for just a moment is that you're holding an apple in your hand, or an apple is floating in front of you, in front of your perspective, and you can see it, and you can turn and look at it from different perspectives. And the apple is all in every aspect of it. So no matter where you turn and look at it from a different perspective, it's all the apple. It's all the apple. And you can turn and see it on another side, and you get a different take on it, no matter where you're looking at it. But within the apple, the appleness itself, it is all the apple. Now, here's an interesting thing, is if you take that apple floating in front of you, take your imagination and delve into the apple, jump into the center of the apple, and imagine you're in the core somewhere and you're floating around, and you can see the seeds, and you can look at it from different perspectives. What you're recognizing is that you have a perspective on the apple. The apple's whole and complete and total in and of itself, and it's contained no matter where you are looking at it. The total appleness, that 100% of the apple is there. You're just looking at it from a different perspective. And so many people have put forth the idea that the universe is a hologram. And I know there was a guy back in the late 1900s who like 1990-ish. I don't remember his name right off the bat, but he wrote a book called The Holographic Universe, where he put forth the same sort of concept that this universe in which we live is in a sense a hologram that we're experiencing. I know that Edgar Mitchell, who founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences and was very much interested in the study of consciousness, he put forth in some of his works and some of the things that came through both IONS and some of the other groups he was supporting was the idea of a holographic universe, that this universe in which we live and move is really a hologram. And so sometimes we tend to think it's us and a separate universe, but we're sort of like we're immersed in the apple of the universe. That apple that's floating in front of us is us looking out and sort of taking a perspective from outside the manifest universe and looking at it separate from us, but we're really immersed in it. And so we're in the middle of the apple. We're in the middle of the universe. And this whole idea of a holographic universe is very much in alignment with science of mind philosophy, in the sense that we teach oneness, that everything is one, and that the spirit or God or whatever the infinite intelligence is, that whatever word you wish to give it, embedded itself in its entire creation of the universe. And we are aspects of that creation, and we are floating around, shifting our perspective within this holographic universe, and all we're doing continuously is shifting that perspective. But what it means is that everything we are looking at has and contains within it the wholeness of the entire universe. We often hear I think it's the William Blake quote about the holding a grain of sand and seeing the universe in a grain of sand. It's the same sort of concept that many people who have had mystical experiences have come to the same conclusion as many of these scientific thinkers, that the entire universe is a oneness, and that our experience of it is just a shifting in perspective and how we experience the universe. And so with that sort of as a setup and backdrop, seeing the world as this vast universe, what I want you to consider is taking that perspective as we look at the Science of Mind textbook. This Saturday morning series, which is a dialogue, I want to encourage you to interact with us. As the banner says on the screen today, we're focusing on what it does from the introduction to the textbook. But this textbook is actually a hologram as well, and I'll explain that idea in a bit more in just a second. But all of the wisdom within it is contained in all aspects of it, which sometimes makes it interesting to read from that perspective. But I want to encourage you, if you're watching, be sure to leave a comment as to where you're from. If you've got a question, leave a question or comment in the comment field, and I will come back to those in a minute as you leave your questions or comments. But I want to sort of give you a run through of the textbook. This program, and I know several of you come on regularly on Saturday morning and listen to it or interact with it. But whether you're watching it live or you're watching on the recording, I want you to consider that the book is just a hook. The book is a hook to talk about the science of mind. So I'm here to dialogue with you on the science of mind. So if you've got any question about any aspect of the philosophy beyond the section what it does, be sure to ask that. This dialogue works best when we talk with one another and we connect with one another. So I love comments and questions. And so be sure to post those in the comment field. And if not, I've got my own questions I can ask myself, and we can have you can witness sort of a schizophrenic discussion where I'm talking with myself on stuff. And I'm okay doing that too sometimes, but I'd rather interact with you. So be sure to drop your comments and questions. Let me talk about what it does, and I want to run through just the very nature that this is a hologram. One of the concepts is that why we go back to the basics and study those first 4 sections of the introduction every year. One is just to re-anchor ourselves in the basics of what we believe about this philosophy, because it's easy to sort of like pile on other thoughts and other aspects of it. And sometimes we lose track of the underpinnings of the entire philosophy. And that's why many of our communities go back and do that. In fact, this has a tradition back to the 1950s when Holmes used to do Sunday talks. He did them through the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But in the 1950s, he started having series of back to basics where he discussed the introductory sections, which are the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. And he would have the same talks every year. That same titles, but what he would say would be different every year. And what does this mean? So let's just cover it very quickly, a very brief overview. The thing itself, that's God. That's what he's talking about by God. God is a loaded word, and a lot of us think that means so many different things. We have that old conditioning to see God as, the old man up in the sky, the Sistine Chapel painting by Michelangelo with his hand reached out to us and it's separate from us. But what many mystics and what the science of mind philosophy teaches is that image of God is dead, and within us is the concept that God is all. And so it goes back to like Hermetic teachings where they taught that the thing that created the universe and is embedded in it is called the all. Holmes uses lots of words for it: the all, the thing itself, the way the infinite intelligence, infinite love. He defines it with its characteristics. In fact, anytime you're reading Holmes and you see words capitalized in the science of mind, he's trying to define and use something that's referencing this thing itself. If you want to plug in spirit, God, infinite intelligence, whatever word makes sense for you and is comfortable for you, that's what he's talking about when he talks about the thing itself, the thing that created the universe, embedded itself within it, and is manifesting itself and experiencing itself through us. That is the creator of the hologram, and the hologram itself, and is outside the hologram, is the divine, is God, the thing itself. The way it works, well, there's a static aspect of being that is within God, but there's also a movement within God. So the way it works is that there is movement or thought, the actual thinking, which could also be referenced in like the word. The word is a thought, but the thought or the word is actually a movement in consciousness. Everything in this holographic universe is embedded with consciousness or mind. In fact, when you're talking about the science of mind, what you're actually talking about is the universe of mind. We're living and swimming and moving around within mind or consciousness. And so when we move mind, when we move consciousness, that is the experiences. It creates the experiences of our life. And so when we talk about the way it works, the way it being the thing itself, the way it works, or the way it actually experiences itself and allows creation of itself so that it can experience it, is through the movement of our consciousness. So each day when we have thoughts, they are a movement within the field of mind, which allows for the manifestation of it. What does it do? What does it do when it does that? It manifests into the world of form. And, we can look at this as that there's a very materialistic aspect to our modern times, and that's due to a lot to science. Science has been so successful in helping us understand how the material physical universe works that we tend to sometimes forget there's a universe or an aspect of life that extends beyond the material world. And so one way of looking at this is that we live in a sliding scale between the world of form and matter, and this physical universe is right here. But outside of that is much more other realms that extend beyond the world of form. All this stuff we're experiencing inside the hologram is just one part of life. But beyond that is the aspect of the mental universe and then the spiritual universe. And we could parse it down into different ways of looking at it. But I don't want you to make a division between it. I want you to see it as it's all one. So when we're immersed in this holographic universe, the holographic universe is not only the world of form and stuff, it's also the world of our thoughts and the mental world, and it's also the world of spirit or God or the thing itself, which created all. And so we have this, in our awareness, we can shift and change our perspective, just like we're in the middle of a hologram and looking at different matter and physical stuff from different perspectives. We can shift and change our thinking and look at thoughts from a different perspective. And we can also shift and see how our experience spirit from a different perspective as well. We're in a holographic universe that extends beyond the world of form into the world of mind and into the world of spirit. Yet we have choice, we have free will choice in how we choose to look at things and where we shift our perspective. And what we tend to look at is what we tend to experience. And that's a concept in science of mind of the law of correspondence, where as above, so below. What's in our minds, what's in our thinking is what we experience in our lives. Again, if you have questions about any of this or anything on science of mind, I want you to drop a comment in the comment field, and we will get to those comments in just a second. But back to the basics of the book. The thing itself is God. The way it works is through the movement of mind, and then it acts upon it. There is what is called the divine law, that the movement of consciousness is through our thoughts. What it does is it acts upon that movement, those thoughts. There is in this holographic universe a law and it is called the law with a capital L, to differentiate it from other laws. There are laws within the laws of physics. There are spiritual laws, and laws are simply scientific aspects of nature being described about how things work. When we talk about the law of gravity or the law of thermodynamics within the realm of the physical material universe, those are physical laws, but there's also mental laws like the law of attraction. But at the ultimate core behind everything is what Holmes and many other New Thought teachers called the law. The law with a capital L is the aspect that acts upon thought to form and create manifestation within the world of matter. And that's the whole premise of science of mind. Fourth aspect of the introduction is to recognize that how to use it, because it's one to lay this theory out. Oh, we're immersed in a holographic universe. The thing itself has created this thing, and we have different perspectives. And the movement of consciousness through our thoughts is the way in which it works. And what it does is it acts upon that level of consciousness to create the manifest world. Well, because we have knowledge of these laws and the law, we can use it to our benefit. And so that is through affirmations and affirmative prayer, our science of mind treatment process. All of that is a directed way of shifting the consciousness into in a way that allows us to create the manifestation. Now, I said this book is a hologram because what I want you to also recognize is that when you read it, Holmes can't talk about one part of the philosophy without bringing in the other parts, because they're all connected. You can't talk about the thing itself without really talking about the way it works and how to use it and what it does. And throughout the rest of the book, the rest of the sections, in fact, last year, if you sat in on any of my presentations, I like to go through the introduction. I may not do that today, but to go through the introduction and then beyond into the chapters and show that essentially the book is laid out this. After the first 4 introductory sections, he then goes in more detail about them. But every chapter seems sort of circular when you're first reading it, because he can't talk about the whole philosophy or one aspect of it without talking about the whole thing. And you might look at it that in the book, what he's doing is he's focused and putting a perspective on, say, what do we mean by mind, or what do we mean by spirit? But it's hard to talk about that without talking about the whole thing at once, to put it in the particular perspective. We're glad to see that Christopher is joining us from Detroit. We've got a number of people watching live. Hopefully you're enjoying this. What I've been doing over the last couple of minutes is just outlining that we live in a holographic universe that fits very much with the concepts of science of mind. Everything is one. We shift our perspective. I've been discussing the introductory sections to the textbook and how they really are all talking about the same thing, but from a different focus. They're looking at it from a different vantage point, just like we were looking at that apple a moment ago from different perspectives. And yes, as Wayne says, 'tis all God, and he's asking, how do you practice oneness? And how do you get into that sense of knowing that you are part of the hologram and that everything is one and interconnected? That is why spiritual practices are so important to the philosophy of science of mind. Because we live in a world, a very mesmerizing physical material world that is constantly demanding our attention. And a minute ago, I was saying we live in the sliding scale where we're in the physical world, but we're also in the mental world, and we're also in the spiritual world. And every day we sort of shift our attention, and every moment we're looking at the universe from these different perspectives. We're looking at it from a material world, a mental world, or a spiritual world. Most of the time, we're so mesmerized by the physical world that we tend to think that's all there is. That I've got to get through my to-do list, do my things, interact with people, blah blah blah. It's all about the stuff. And but it's some spiritual practices allow us to anchor into the oneness and recognize that there's more than just physical stuff, that there is this interconnectedness of everything. And so how do we practice oneness? Affirmations, first off, is to set the intention that you want to know and experience oneness in your life. Secondly, after setting the intentions, is to use spiritual practices. You're following your intentions. Affirmations, you affirm every day, that I am tasting and knowing and experiencing oneness every day. You're using that divine law that I was talking about a moment ago by shifting your thinking into the desire to know and see and sense oneness. And so what you're doing is now using the law itself in a spiritual sense to experience oneness more. And then that leads you into meditative practices. You can sit on a meditation cushion and practice oneness, whatever meditation works for you. You can go out in nature. Many people feel a great sense of oneness in doing that. You can also go out in public. Now, the public can be a lot of hubbub stuff going on, but if you can sit back quietly and just observe and have a little affirmation or a little mantra that you're saying inside, we're all one. That he and I are one. She and I are one. We are all interconnected. Have little ways, little hooks and practices you can do, but it begins by setting an intention that you want to do that. Okay. We have another comment here. Our perspective must shift from an anthropocentric perspective to a cosmological ontology. Yes, I agree with you, Fiona. And that's really what we're talking about, in a way, is that we tend to look at things as it's all physical matter, people. We tend to think that's it, but we're wanting to look up and understand, when we have meaning, when we have this desire, as you're referencing, about the meaning of life, we want to understand humans have a desire for meaning. And in fact, many of the classes we talk about this is that, you can look at it that, many of the scientific theories about human motivation all reference the fact that within humans is a desire to understand meaning. There's a lot of stuff, people out on the internet now talking about that we're in the middle of a meaning crisis, that many of the issues in life are going on because people have lost their sense of meaning. And I think there is some validity to that conversation. But within all of this is within you and I is a desire to understand the aspects of the meaning of life. And why am I here? What is the purpose of this existence? Because it's kind of funny and spooky in a way when you get up and you wake up and you go, oh, here I am living around in shifting. And even though a guy on the internet the other day said I'm in a holographic universe and and I'm in the middle of a hologram. And wow, why does this hologram exist? And how do I interact with it? Science of Mind is a philosophy system that we can practice to see if it works for us. And the more we test it and the more we check out its validity, the more we go deeply into the practice. Of course, there's some people who come to it and they don't, and they dabble in it and it doesn't work for them and they say it's a bunch of baloney, and that's fine. I think some people have to come at it with the right perspective and the right thought. And if there's a lot of cynical, if they believe it doesn't work when they come in, they're going to experience that it doesn't work. And that's the way the law works. What we think about is what we're going to get. And the more we think that this is craziness, the more we're going to experience Science of Mind as craziness. And that's just natural. But it also means that if we then see that, we can start saying, well, what is it I really want to create? And start creating that aspect to us. And to what Fiona's question's getting at is within us is a desire for meaning. And so we all start looking at and creating what I call mental maps. And these mental maps are ways in which we start testing the universe and we decide, here's how the universe works. And if it doesn't work that way, then we discard it. And then it's like if I'm driving from here to another city and I go the wrong way and it's taken too long, I'm going to learn that's the wrong path and I'm going to change my directions and move in the direction that's where I want to go. And if when I turn in a direction that things don't work for me, then I recognize, okay, that's not the way to go. And then I turn and go to the way I want. And the more I shift into that way, the more I create the map between here and there. And if my direction and my goal is meaning, to understand the meaning of life, the more I can test life and say, is this right? Is an external God who I pray to and beseech them to intervene in my life working for me? Oh, it's not working. Okay, let's go to the scientific model. Parts of this are working, but parts aren't. It doesn't have the meaning that I want for it. Okay, let's go to this philosophy over here. And many people who come to Science of Mind often dabble in many aspects of spirituality and taste different things. And they say, is this true for me? And if it's not true for me, they discard it and they move on to something else. And I think that's a beautiful way to be in the world, is that you have to create your own mental map. And by the mental map, you then embody sort of this picture of meaning for you. And that's your, and the meaning, and this gets to where what Fiona, I believe, is talking about. And Fiona, jump in if I'm not getting to where you want to go with that. But we tend to focus on the world and physical stuff and humanness, when we really need to back up and look at this giant perspective of, yes, the world is real in one regard, but there's a greater and higher truth as we move up into the mental realms and into the spiritual realms. When we get to that cosmological perspective of the divine and seeing the interaction between spirit and mind and matter, then we have a greater perspective, and it gives greater particular meanings to our life. Yes, Christopher, practice makes progress. And what are we practicing towards? We're practicing towards meaning in the case of what we're just talking about. We're practicing towards a sense of developing the idea that we live in oneness. And the more that we can, the more we practice anything, the better we get at it. In fact, there's a lot of people like to say that if you want to master a job, you have to spend so many thousands of hours performing it before you truly master it. But one of the things is that we're so used to immediate feedback and immediate gratification that we often taste something, and if it doesn't, we don't immediately master it, we throw it away and go to something else. And I think some people approach spiritual practice that same way. Now, I want to say, let's make a distinction here, because I was talking about creating your mental map, and sometimes you're tasting life and trying things, and you'll know pretty quickly if you're going in the right direction or the wrong direction. So when you're building your mental maps, sometimes the mental map structure gives you feedback that allows you to shift towards greater and higher truth of what's true for you. But then once you're locked onto something that feels true and you really want to know it and sense it, then you have to practice it. Like if you have an inner calling that for a particular you may get an inner calling that says that your purpose in life is to be a writer. And then you sit down to write and you have writer's block, or you write something and you get feedback that it's not good, and you don't take the criticism well. There can be little things like that may throw you off your path, but within you, in your heart, you're a writer. So you have anchored into the truth of who you are, and because your life is so much directed you towards that aspect of being a writer that it's your purpose. But you have to keep practicing to develop that skill and to develop it to the ability that you've mastered it. So knowing the truth comes pretty quickly, but taking and practicing, but mastering the ideas that are true takes that practice. And understanding oneness, it can resonate within you right now, that oneness is the reality of this universe that we live in. No matter how many people we look at it, you can go from the mystical aspect of mystics who have tasted oneness, so many people from so many traditions. Every religious faith has a mystical tradition that at its root teaches oneness. Many years ago, Aldous Huxley, who wrote the Doors of Perception and other books, he studied the common themes of religion and found within that something he called the perennial philosophy. And an aspect of the perennial philosophy he found in the roots of all religions was this sense of oneness. And obviously that's at the root of Science of Mind as well. Ernest Holmes studied science, religion, and philosophy to come up with what he thought were the golden threads of truth. And in the golden threads of truth, the very first one is the sense of oneness. Yeah. And so for us to truly know that, though, we can know it from an intellectual standpoint, but to know it in our bones, it takes practice. It takes meditation, nature, all those other things we were talking about in regards to Wayne's question a few minutes ago. Wayne's comment is really just building up your spiritual muscle and knowing it, and you got to press through on it. One more thing, and again, encouraging questions and comments from our viewers. Drop a comment in there regarding anything on Science of Mind. What I started to mention a few minutes ago is that every week we talk about the science of mind, and we have a sort of a themed section. And this week it is what it does from the introduction. But these are just conversations on science of mind. These are just an opportunity for us to interact. So if you've got a question about anything on science of mind, even if it's beyond the topic I'm talking about, drop it in the comment field, and we can move forward, into the direction that you would want to go. Anything at all that would be that. Diego, hey, my buddy Diego, good to see you. Good morning. Pleasure to see you as well. Thanks for coming along for the ride this morning, Diego. And let's see. Well, here's a beautiful question. Christopher White, how can I connect with you? I will put my website up on the thing, and there you go. If you want to connect more with me, you can go to consciousbridge.com. In fact, I want everybody who's doing this, watching it now, or watching it on the recording, I would encourage you to go to my website, which is consciousbridge.com. A lot of my writings and videos are put out in two places. They exist on my website. Everything by that web address, that URL right there. You can access most stuff, and there's ways you can also connect with me personally through the website. Read the blogs that I write, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter there, which I periodically put out. And also, I would highly encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. The other day, I produced a video on called "Why Are You on Facebook?" to question looking at our intentions on the use of social media. And I got another video coming out in a couple of days. So I think it's going to go live on Tuesday regarding is the universe for you or against you. So that's coming out soon. And I've continuously got content flowing through those particular aspects. So encourage you to go check them out. And that's how you can contact me as well, Christopher. So I appreciate that. And again, back to this whole idea that we're using this simply to jump into the entire thing, because the whole of philosophy is embedded in every aspect of it. If we live in a holographic universe, then all the science of mind is actually embedded in everything. But if you look at this book from that standpoint, everything in the book is talking about the philosophy, and all of these Saturday morning conversations are really just a way to come at and into the teaching from a different angle, from a different perspective. But the philosophy itself is a unified philosophy. It's a philosophy of oneness. So it's all one. And so it's hard to talk about one part of it without talking about other parts of it, which can be frustrating for the left brain logical person, such as myself. When I first came into the philosophy many, many years ago, is I wanted to, to go from A to B to C to D, in a logical way. Teach it to me, in that logical standpoint. Sometimes it's difficult to jump into it because you have to understand other things. That's why Science of Mind and rereading Holmes actually, and taking classes and talking with other people is so valuable, because the more you build up your understanding of the concepts and ideas, the more you get the entire picture of the hologram. You've looked at Science of Mind from different directions and perspectives. Then you come back and look at an area that you've looked at previously, or you thought that you read and understood. Now you'll read it from a different perspective, and you understand it at a different level, because you've had the different perspectives of looking at the hologram that Science of Mind is. The particular section we're looking at, let me just pull a quote from that real quickly. I'm looking on page 40. He says, this is Holmes writing, perhaps the simplest way to state the proposition is to say that we're surrounded by a mind, capital M, so it's divine, God, the thing itself, or intelligence, capital I. So mind or intelligence are embedded in everything. They're aspects of the divine, the thing itself, the oneness. So the simplest way is to say that we're surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything, that the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind, that the abstract essence of beauty, truth, and wisdom coexist in the mind of the universe, that we also exist in it with a capital I, and may draw up from it. But then he uses all caps to make the following statement. He says, but what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. Let me repeat that. But what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. Well, first off, I'm going to ask a question for you, anybody out there listening that's on this live. What is mind to you? What is mind? When he talks about mind, this whole philosophy, the science of mind with a capital M, what is mind? What is mind? But he says that for us to draw anything from this vast universe, we must draw from it, but what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. Now, he says our own minds, but I want to be very clear that we want to make a distinction between mind that we're embedded with. We're embedded in an ocean of mind or consciousness, and then our use of it. Because see, we also, from a languaging standpoint, think of our use of thoughts and thinking as the use of our mind. When we use our mind, we're actually thinking within the one mind. It's the consciousness in the one mind of the universe that is in us, in which we live and move and have our being, is what we're using. But in our languaging, we sometimes will say our mind to talk about our use of the one mind within us that from our perspective seems to be our own consciousness. That part of me that thinks I'm Mark and you're Wayne and you're Christopher and you're Fiona and you're Diego. That part of you that thinks it's you, you're just using that one mind, but you're also sort of creating a container around that use of the one mind and saying, this is my mind. Well, it's hard for us to get out of that because we live in this sort of conscious awareness. But what we need to do every day, and in practicing oneness, getting back to that, brings us to that perspective of shifting our consciousness outward, is to expand that sense of what, when we're using our mind, to make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. What is mind to you? Leave me a comment if you've got a consciousness, a question about that. Christopher says subconscious. Subconscious is mind. Yes, Holmes makes a distinction, and many New Thought teachers make a distinction that between conscious mind and subconscious mind. But they're both mind. And the conscious mind is that aspect that knows itself and has volition and will and can think. And the subconscious mind is the interconnectedness of everything that we think into. And the subconscious mind, which is, since it's below consciousness, we're not often aware of it, but it's also the actor upon our thoughts. It's an aspect that can also be called law. When I talked about the law a minute ago, it's also an aspect of the subconscious. Our conscious thoughts flow through the law, but they also flow through our subconscious. And when we're acting automatically, when we don't have, when we're not consciously choosing our thoughts, the subconscious actually is the aspect of the repository of all prior thinking that just acts automatically. You can think of it like a habit. If we don't choose, our habits just follow, and the habits are in our subconscious. But mind is everything. Mind is both the conscious aspect and the subconscious mind, in my perspective. Diego says the natural universe manifestation of consciousness. Yeah, I like that. Both of you are right, and there's no right or wrong here. We're just talking. But what I want you to see is that when you look at mind or you consider mind, we have our use of it, but we're swimming in an ocean. It's like if you're a drop of water in the ocean, which is an analogy we often use, that your individual aspect is the part that you recognize as you. But when you move into a sense of greater oneness and you move further along the spiritual path, when you move up out of the material realm into the mental and the spiritual realms, like I was talking about a moment ago, you become more aware that you are and the ocean are one, that you and mind are one. So spirit, the thing itself, embedded itself into its creation and created within it all of its characteristics, including the very nature that at the ground of all being is consciousness, or mind with a capital M. And that it's our thinking, it's the movement of thoughts in that mind that leads through actions by what we call the law to create the manifest universe. And that, in a nutshell, is the science of mind teaching. That, and then the practices to more and more taste and know oneness, to know oneness so deeply that we focus on this process more completely in individual lives, that we make conscious choices, that in our understanding of the flow of my use of mind and thinking creates a movement within the law which leads to the manifestation of the universe. That process, the more I consciously choose my thoughts, the more I consciously create what I want in the universe. Yeah. Fiona says individual mind is a contraction in mind. That's a good question. You might put it that way. I like that. I think it gets to the question also of mental equivalence, Fiona. And I know that in your science of mind studies, you've approached that. What we do is that if we were able as humans to fully know and comprehend within our mind the entire mind with a capital M, I think from our perspective and where we are right now in our evolution, it would be overwhelming to us. But I think that part of the spiritual practices and part of the mystical aspects of nature that we get into, when a person has a mystical experience, I think they are letting go of that contraction within their own use of mind and tasting that vastness of the universe. And you'll often hear people having these numinous experiences of the divine. And I think that's when there's this breakdown between our sense of being this individual mind, a contraction in the big mind, like you're talking about, and breaking down that contraction and expanding it outward. I mean, I know I've had experiences myself. One quickly was in a lucid dream one time a few years back where I was aware that I was dreaming. And if you ever had a lucid dream, there's a distinct difference in it. But in the lucid dream, I was aware and had conscious choice and could move in the dream and knew that I was dreaming. And at a certain point in the dream, I'm walking along and there's a wall beside me. And I thought, what would happen if I stuck my head through the wall? In the dream, it made logical sense that, I can put my head through the wall. And when I did, the universe opened up into this vast array of stars and things flowing by. And it was just, wow. And the funny thing, ironic in a way, is that I got so excited and so overwhelmed by this numinous experience of oneness in this lucid dream that it shook me so much that I woke up. And I was sort of mad at the moment because it was so wonderful and so such a fantastic feeling. And I've had other experiences like that too. And I think all of us have tasted. I think that it's a lot of mystics like to reference these as taste, because we're knocking around in this physical life, but and the more we can practice our oneness, to the question we were dialoguing on a little while ago, the more we can build up that expansion of our consciousness, the more there's less a contraction in our minds, and the more we're expanding our awareness to encompass the bigger aspect of mind. And that gets back to what I mentioned a minute ago, mental equivalence. When we think that our life is narrow and focused, then that's what we're going to experience. But when we think that our lives are big and expansive and we have access to the total universe and that we can manifest anything that we desire through our use of this mind, that is where the idea of mental equivalence comes in. It's like having I know that last week one of my minister friends used the concept of, in his message, of a hose pipe. And how big is our hose pipe? And it's the same sort of thing. How big can we expand the influx of spirit within us? And the more we let go of the contractions of our littleness, and the more we see our bigger expansions of who we are, then the greater we can manifest a life of that we desire. The development of a habit where we consistently think about what we are thinking. Yes, that is so important. That is bringing that aspect of Practice, practice, practice. And the more we see oneness, the more we look out and know oneness, the more we recognize oneness in everything in our world of form, the more we recognize oneness within our mental realm of thoughts, the more we can taste and experience oneness in our experience of the divine, the more that we build up the habit of knowing oneness. And the more we develop the habit of oneness, the more that our mental equivalents expand so that we can be a bigger hose pipe for the influx of spirit and all its infinite abilities to create the life that we want. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you all for being on the program today. I hope it's been beneficial to you. I've had a good time. Again, I've been scrolling the banner on there. I want to encourage you to visit my website, consciousbridge.com, read my blogs, connect with the YouTube videos. Yes, thank you for bringing it up, Diego. Mark was not aware you were in the behind the scenes, but I'm so happy you were there doing that. Yeah, and I just want to appreciate everybody being here and tell your friends about all of this. Thanks for coming in, and also Christopher, I appreciate your kind words. And it's Science of Mind is a beautiful and wonderful philosophy, and I hope you've enjoyed this morning's presentation. Be sure to check out my other writings and videos, and be sure to come back next week when we'll have one of our wonderful speakers leading us in another dialogue around the science of mind. And keep seeing that book and all of our discussions is simply a holographic hook. We're trying to bring you into the hologram of Science of Mind so that you can come at it and look at it from a different perspective every week. Bring your questions, ideas, dialogue, and let's come have some fun together every Saturday morning. Thank you so much all for your being here. And thank you, Elzia. And I was just talking about you and your host pipe thing a second ago. And thank you, Fiona, and namaste to you. I appreciate all of you for watching. Thank you. And we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferlin Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a super special thank you to Dr. Tracy Brown, RSCP. Thanks for being a super donor. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.